Hello, in this video we're going to follow up from today's class where we looked at specifically how to find the relationship of a given graph of a quadratic. So we talked about how over the past couple of days we've been talking about two forms. And the two forms we've been talking about are standard form and that is the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And the other form is called factored form. And that's the form y equals a, x minus p, x minus r. So we can try to go directly to either of these forms. Often one form is either easier than the other. And in fact, there's a third form we haven't talked about yet. But the key thing to remember is that we need to, in this case, we need to find a, b, and c. And in this case, we need to find a, p, and r. And it turns out that based on what's given in the graph, one of these forms might be easier than the other. So just as a little recap as well, remember that standard form gives us the y-intercept. So we can read the y-intercept directly from this form because y-intercepts occur when x is 0, and when x equals 0, y is going to equal c. So therefore the y-intercept is going to be 0, c. With factored form gives us the x-intercepts. And we get that. We can think of it as, in order to make y 0, the x values, y is 0 when x is equal to p or x is equal to r. So notice, if I put a value of p in for both the x's, this binomial becomes 0, and as a result, y is 0. If I put in r for both the x's, this binomial becomes 0, and therefore y becomes 0. So we know that we're going to have the roots p0 and r0. So I might look and say, okay, well I'm given the roots as well as the y-intercept and conveniently the vertex. So which form do I want to use? I would recommend, in this case, factored form, because notice, if I just take a second and let's split this down the center here. If I try standard form, notice I can calculate. We see that c is going to be 6. So that leaves me with a and b to calculate. But if I use factored form, so notice if we have a root at -1, 0, it's going to be x plus 1. My other root is 3, 0. So my other binomial is x minus 3, because if I put in 3 into this, it goes to 0. If I put in -1 into this, it goes to 0. Notice all that I'm left to solve for is a. So if I use standard form, I have 2 unknowns in to figure out. If I use factored form, I have 1 unknown to figure out. So either form is fine, but by picking one form over the other, often you have to do less work. So if I want to find a now, so let's use factor form, I'm going to sub any point except the root or x-intercept. And the reason why is because if we substitute the x-intercept, you'll see that we're going to end up multiplying a by 0, so we won't be able to solve it. So I'm going to pick the point 0, 6. So let's go down here. Sub 0, 6. So I'm going to get 6 is equal to a, and then I'm going to say 0 plus 1, 0 minus 3. So 6 is equal to a, bracket 1, minus 3. And so let's give ourselves a little more space here, 1 second. So if we continue with our algebra here, we get 6 is equal to -3a. So a is equal to negative 2. So therefore, in factored form, this would be y equals negative 2, x plus 1, x minus 3. And I actually feel quite good about this because notice, we see that this parabola opens down, and therefore a should be negative. But notice, the question says, well, I say find the relationship that represents a given graph. So I'm actually done. But often what the question will say is find the relationship in standard form. So what that means is I can do my work in factored form, and then I can change forms. So I do that by expanding the brackets. 2, and we're going to get x squared minus 3x plus x minus 3. We get negative 2 bracket x squared minus 2x minus 3. Let's come up here. So we're going to expand that, distribute the negative 2, so we're going to get negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6. So this is the relationship in standard form. This is the relationship in factored form. It doesn't matter which form I have. They both represent that same curve. And I can look back at the curve and say, well, why do I feel good about my standard form? Well, notice, the standard form has a c value of 6, which matches the y-intercept. So I hope this video helped. Remember that when we talk about this, students think this is something new and very different than what you've done in the past. But it's really a good exercise to go back and connect what you're doing here to when you're working with linear relationships. It's the idea of having an unknown in a relationship, finding some points, substituting them in to get those unknown values. I hope this helped.